Hello, my name is George Cunningham. I'm the school counselor coordinator for Hampton High School, and we're going to talk about the ACT and SAT and here in our ACT SAT workshop, March 2017. Before we get to that, I just wanted to make sure I introduce, I should say, our counseling staff. Our school counselors is pictured here. And their contact information are also located on our HHS website, which I'll show you in a few moments. But our school counseling department is composed of Mrs. Carrie Ambrosino, Mrs. Tatiana Council, Mrs. Shannon Chisholm-Patton, George Cunningham, myself, of course, and Mrs. Leckenby, our school counselor secretary, Jennifer Oliver, who is our college and career coach, and Mrs. Kathy Roughton and Mrs. Jody Sheetal Anderson are also our school counselors here at Hampton. Now, before I proceed with this workshop, I wanted to just go over the agenda and cover some of the topics we're going to attest to during in our talks about ACT and SAT. We're going to first talk about the purpose of the two tests. Next, I'll provide an overview and then discuss the differences and similarities between the ACT and the SAT. Another question that we often receive from students and parents, and it's a great question, is when should students take these tests? And while you're waiting to test, I want to talk about helpful websites for practice as well as helpful tips for the test day. Now, in talking about the ACT and SAT, why are these tests important? Do these tests have something to do with high school graduation? And of course, the answer to that is no. The ACT and SAT has nothing to do with high school graduation. These two tests are specifically meant for students who are considering on attending a four-year college after high school graduation. Students who are contemplating or who are actually going to be going to a two-year college or into a vocational program would not necessarily need the ACT or SAT, as they are for four-year college programs. So what do these tests measure? Well, basically the two tests, students who are, as I mentioned before, the tests are the students who are interested in four-year college should take the ACT and or the SAT. There are variations in the grading policies that affect what students earn as far as their grade point average from school district to school district. So when colleges are receiving this information and making their decisions as far as students, as far as whether or not they're college ready or ready to enter their particular university or college, the GPA is not necessarily a standard factor across the United States. And so the ACT and the SAT is meant to be that norm or that standard, if you will, to measure every student in the country as far as whether or not they'll have future academic success at the college or university that they are applying to. Now, also noted, I found that in some cases, students who score very well on their ACT or SAT, these scores can prove to balance a lower GPA that they had earned while in high school. Colleges also use these scores to help differentiate student skill sets, as I mentioned before, in reference to or respect to future academic success. It's important to note that every college and every university has their own requirements concerning the scores they are looking for. So, a student may ask, well, is this a good score when they take the SAT or ACT? And the answer to that, or my answer to it, is basically it depends on the college, the four-year college or university that you're trying to get accepted into. So that particular college has their own requirements. I'm going to kind of go over that at a later point in this video. But based on their requirements, that determines whether the score is a good score or a score that needs to, or a test that needs to be taken again to get a better score. Now, I want to provide a test overview in regards to both the SAT and SAT, or ACT and SAT. And to do that, I'm going to go to our website. Now, in looking at our website on Hampton High School, and actually if you just Google Hampton High School and choose the first option, you're going to find that typically that's Hampton High School, and it'll take you to our home page. And this particular page that I'm on is found under the School Counseling tab. And all you do is go, what is the PSAT, SAT, ACT? You just click onto that link to go to this page. An overview of both of these tests, basically both the SAT and ACT, they run almost similarly. If you take out the essay part, about 3 hours long. And students can opt to take the essay, and there is an extra charge to take the essay. But students who take the SAT or ACT tend to take about 3 hours without the essay. There's a number of sections for each test is the same, 4 plus an essay. The different sections, this is where you'll notice some similarities and differences that we'll talk about later. But you'll see in the sections there, you get for the SAT, you got the reading, the writing and language. There's a math section on the SAT where there's no calculator allowed. There's a math section where calculator is allowed, and of course the optional essay. And you'll see the times for each subtest right there. And again, this is a time test. I don't think I mentioned that at the start here, but which is very different for students because they're very accustomed to taking their standards of learning tests, which are untimed. So this is definitely something for them to begin practicing now before they actually have to sit for the test, so they can understand how to pace themselves as they're being timed for each section. Now for the ACT, you see an English, a math, a reading, a science, and an optional essay. Scoring is, as you can see the overview here, there's 2 sets of scoring for the critical reading and for the math. Each of those sections, a max score of 800 a student can earn. And so the combined score, if it was a perfect score, it could be a 1600. For the ACT, the score or scaled score ranges anywhere between 1 and 36. And finally, wrong answer penalty. And this was actually a recent change for the SAT, I should say, back in March of 2016. It used to be that you were penalized for incorrect responses on the SAT, but now both the SAT and ACT, there are no penalties. So we definitely encourage students to answer every question because again, they will only be scored on what they get correct. Now, another thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned was the fee waiver. Both the SAT and the ACT have a cost, but if a student meets a certain requirement in regards to getting an SAT fee waiver, and of course, for instance, if you clicked on the SAT fee waiver, it will give you some eligibility requirements. And basically, these eligibility requirements for the SAT are quite similar to the ACT. So as long as students meet one of these categories, whether being enrolled in or participate in National School Lunch Program, that means receiving free or reduced lunch, in other words, students can get up to 2 waivers for the SAT as well as the ACT over their lifetime, which could definitely help. Now, in looking at the similarities of the ACT and the SAT, well, again, as I mentioned before, the length of the test is about 3 hours long, minus the essay. Both are relatively long individual tests, and they range, each section that is, ranges from 35 to 65 minutes. The essay is optional and is also scored separately. As I mentioned on the overview, there are no wrong answer penalties. Neither test will take points away for students who either mark an answer incorrectly or leave it blank. As far as the math content, you'll need to know some advanced math concepts such as trigonometry for both exams. So we typically encourage students when they take this, take the ACT or SAT, to at least be in, or to a completed Algebra 1 and Geometry and be in an Algebra 2 class or beyond. As far as grammar, both the ACT and the redesigned SAT test for punctuation. And as far as charts and graphs on the ACT, you'll see them only in the science reasoning section, and on the redesigned SAT they appear throughout the test. So again, these are the similarities of both tests. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I wanted to make sure that it is a multiple choice test, with the exception of with the SAT. In addition to multiple choice, they do have some self-produced responses for the math sections where students are actually completing a math question and they're not choosing from A, B, C, or D. They're actually writing the answer onto their answer document. Now the differences. The math, for instance, the ACT represents a more straightforward like questions, kind of like what you would see in school, like on a standards of learning test or on a teacher prepared test, critical skills assessment, any one of those tests that students take during school. Now the SAT requires solving multi-step problems, so it's a little bit more involved as far as math questions on the SAT. As far as calculators, on the redesigned SAT, calculators are allowed only in one of two math sections. Concerning the reading, the redesigned SAT has some paired questions in which one of the questions will ask you to cite specific part of the passage to support your answer choice to the previous question. And as far as scoring, the ACT composite score is the average of your score across 4 different tests. The English, math, the reading, and science, while the SAT composite score is the total of 2 tests. So the math and evidence-based reading and the writing language test, as I was mentioning before, if you had a perfect score, it would be 800 plus 800, which is 1600, and anything below that, where the average of those 4 subtests on the ACT, graded from a 1 to a 36, would be the average of all 4 of those tests as far as getting that composite or final score for the ACT test. Now, when do I take these tests? I highlighted the link of the website that I used in regards to looking at a timeline for parents when you're talking about a freshman, a sophomore, junior, or a senior student. And for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to just focus on the sophomores and juniors. Not to say that the freshmen and seniors are not any more important, but I wanted to make sure that I touched on a couple of the classes just so that you could have an understanding of a timeline. And I also, as I mentioned before, referenced the link so that you could go directly to that link to look at the other classes. Now, for sophomores, parents, you're going to want to be aware of the fact that between September and October, students are going to, at least for the Hampton City School System, in grade 10, second year high school students are going to be preparing to take the PSAT in the month of October. And there's no cost for them to do this. They're actually automatically signed up. Now for juniors, they aren't paid. They have to pay a fee. Typically, I believe it's between $12, $14, if I remember correctly. It changes each year, but juniors can sign up to take that test as well. We'll talk about that when we talk about junior class. But for the sophomores, they can take this test for free. And this is just the preliminary scholastic aptitude test, in essence, what I call the practice SAT. Also, during the months of September and October, there is a college fair, and it's typically housed in the Hampton Convention Center, and that information is posted on our website each year. And this occurs during the month of October, and we encourage all grade levels, actually, not just sophomores or juniors or seniors, but freshmen, every class, just to go there and to see the different colleges and see the different representatives for each college and see what they're about. It's definitely a good experience. There's no cost to this event, and it's open to the public. And next, what I encourage families to, parents especially, to begin working with their children, as we do here in the building, is having them go on to their Family Connections account by Naviance. Some of you have heard about this, some of you may have not, but this is our online program that we use as school counselors to help students facilitate not only a high school plan, but a post-secondary education and career plan for once they do graduate from high school. And just to kind of show you what I'm talking about, one of the if you go to our Hampton High School homepage, and scroll down just a tad bit, you will see this Naviance Family Connection. And once you click on that, the student would then enter their username and password, which is the same as their email account, basically, or to check their grades. This has an automatic of one of my students that I've created, but change the username and password. That's why it shows an incorrect or error. But once a student inputs their username and password, they'll log right in, and basically what will happen, it'll take them to a page that looks like this, which is their home page. And we encourage students to log on to this, to use this as we try to begin using this with them in regards to helping them design a plan of action while they're in high school and for when they graduate. And specifically for 10th graders, I would encourage parents to go to this careers website, or careers tab, I should say. And of course, this is going to have me try this one more time. There we go. Click on that careers tab, and then have the student take what's called the Career Interest Profiler. This is a good good test for students to take. There's no right or wrong answers. And basically what this does, it's composed of 180 questions that has students answer from, do you like to build bookshelves? Are you interested in being a manager over a clothing store? All kinds of different questions that students either say no, that they're not completely not interested, they're somewhat interested, or they're very interested. And at the end of the test, it tabulates results that you will see right here on the screen before you, that represents the particular Holland codes that pertain to them based on their responses. And the top three scores will be marked in green, and the definitions for those are right there. But specifically, what I find very interesting is when you click on the View Matching Occupation List. And right here, students can begin seeing some careers that pertain to the responses that they had given on their career interest profiler. And these careers are sorted based on college preparation, or I should say post-secondary education. So at the very top it says some preparation, so you hover over that question mark and it says, as far as education, these occupations usually require, at least a high school diploma, may require some vocational training or job-related coursework. In some cases, an associate's or bachelor's degree could be needed. All the way down to considerable preparation, where you look at education, says most of these occupations require a 4-year bachelor's degree, but some do not. So, in other words, the lower you go down here on this scale, the more post-secondary education you would have to attain to enter one of these career choices. So, it's just a good thing, a good means of discussion with children and with our students to begin that process of helping them understand that after high school, they get to make some choices of their own, and this can kind of help them in that process. Now, getting back to our discussion as far as what sophomores should be doing between and during their school year, if we move on to November through December, you'll see that they get their PSAT, NMS, QT score reports back in December, and this is a good time for them to begin making those plans for improvement. We're going to talk about some websites that they can go on to. They can actually take their PSAT score results and get a detailed analysis about where their strengths are, as well as where there are some improvements that need to be made. And this can all be done online at no charge. During January and March, we again encourage parents to continue talking with your children about their outlook on what they consider, what they see themselves doing once they graduate from high school. We want students to stay active in extracurricular activities. It's not just enough, especially students who are thinking about a four-year college, or students who are thinking about having other plans as well. But we want them to be well-rounded. We want them to not only be scholarly and good students, but we want them to enjoy their high school life, be a part of the school, get involved with a club or athletic team. And during the months of April through June, they can also look for some summer activities that enhance their student achievement. We have a lot of information posted on our website under special programs. And during this time, this is when we're also meeting with sophomores to schedule them for classes for their junior year. Now you also see the Supermatch College Search. That is yet another feature on this Family Connection page under colleges. And I did want to make sure I mentioned that we know that not every student is going to plan to go to college or even wants to go to college. All right, my typical answer to students who are wondering whether they're going to college or not is based on what their career choice is. Now, some career choices, as you noticed on that career interest profiler inventory, there are jobs that we all know that don't require a college degree, and then we know that there are many jobs that do. So based on the career choice, ultimately determines what kind of post-secondary education they should be receiving. So for students who are considering a four-year college, this tool right here under College Research, again, you click on that Colleges tab on your Family Connections by Naviance page here, and it's called Supermatch College Search. When you click on that, it brings up a page that has a multitude of filters for students to begin selecting to kind of fine-tune some colleges that are offering things that they're interested in. For instance, a particular filter could be location. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, we'll just say the student wants to remain in Virginia. And this could be, how important is it? It's kind of important, meaning that, the student, it doesn't mind perhaps venturing a little bit out to our bordering states. Very important, more, meaning that they really want to stay in Virginia, and of course must have, they don't want to leave whatsoever. And you'll notice once I select that particular filter, you will notice colleges start picking up or being put here, and they all say 100%. Reason why is because all of these schools are 100% located in the state of Virginia. And then let's look at majors. Students interested in a four-year college. Again, you'll start to see this list to kind of altering just a little bit. And as far as a major, I just kind of use this for example, but say for instance, a student is interested in cybersecurity. And you can already see that the majors are starting to autocomplete. And a student can put this one or click the second one, cyber electronic operations, or you can just click add both of them. And then of course you notice some changes here in regards to the listing. It shows some that are at 100%, some that 75%, some at 50%. So if we were to click on 75% for the American Public University, it'll tell you down here that the reason why, of course, that it's not 100% is just simply because it's in a different state, West Virginia, but it does offer that major. And so, if you want to save that, you would just click pin it. And I'm just going to click a couple of them just to show you. University of Richmond. No reason or rhyme or reason to what I'm picking here. So I've checked a couple of these colleges, and then I'm going to scroll to the top, and you'll see them all represented up here. And now I want to compare these pinned schools. And so here you can definitely see a plethora of information from admissions, financial, the type of student body in regards to gender percentages, academics, athletics, and you can even have a link to go to that specific colleges or universities athletic program. And even right here, organizations, Greek organizations, sororities, fraternities, things of that nature. And if you wanted to save this, you would just click the save button and just simply name this particular search, so you wouldn't have to go through that entire search again if you found a few colleges that you were interested in. So again, this is just another tool that students can use to begin thinking about the colleges that they are going to be looking at applying to during their senior year. Now during the summer, we do encourage students to consider some volunteer work. These are all good things to be able to put on a resume or to put on a college application, especially if you do any job shadowing in specific areas that you're going to major in as far as college is concerned. This is also another way to enhance your resume when you get to your senior year and begin that application process. Now we're going to talk about juniors, and starting over from September to October, again, as I mentioned before, and talking about sophomores, the PSAT and MSQT is offered during the month of October. Now the difference for juniors is that they can qualify for National Merit Scholarship. And that scholarship is based on how well they score on that PSAT they take in October. And they can only qualify for this scholarship as a third-year junior. So it's important if they're wanting to be considered for a scholarship, and again, that money goes towards paying for college, that they take this PSAT during their junior year. Again, we got the college fair. We definitely encourage students to attend. November to December, we encourage students to perhaps sightsee and visit some nearby colleges. We try to get them out, or we do have colleges, I should say, that come here from all over the country, I should say. And this is all featured on our Naviance page, or Family Connections page. And basically, when students are interested in a particular college, they will basically see it listed under upcoming college visits. Of course, right now we don't have any coming up, But click back there. But I was just going to see if I can. Oh, it's just not going to. Not going to work for me here. I was going to show you, we did have various colleges who did. I can show you from my interface here. College visits. So as you can see, this listing here, this shows all the different colleges that we did feature here. And what they do is they come and meet with students here in either our school counseling department, or depending on the size of how many people are registering for the event, they may meet with them in our auditorium. And this is just a time for students to begin asking questions, and the college representatives do come out and talk about campus life. They don't just talk about academics, which of course is the major reason for them to go to a particular college or university, but they also talk about living on campus and what's that like, and the different athletic programs and student organizations that they can become involved in while they're enrolled at that particular school. Now, for month of November to December, we encourage students to continue to refine their list for college interests, and to add that to their profile in their Family Connection page by Naviance during the months of January through March. Continually check on academic process, and parents, if you don't already have access to their grades, to student grades, you can request that here at the school counseling office to get a copy of the letter for their student, or for your parent portal access to our grade system, so that you can monitor your students' progress. During the months of or continued months of January to March, this is the time juniors we specifically encourage to begin considering taking the SAT and ACT, and they need to take at least one of them, but we encourage students to consider taking both of them, and to consider taking the SAT and or the ACT at least 2 times during the spring. And this has been noted in the research, as well as just from our working with students, to that basically the more times they take the test, the higher their score goes. But we noticed a tremendous increase from the first time to the second time, and so we definitely encourage students to take it at least twice. The question then remains, well, how many times should they take it? And that kind of goes back to what I was mentioning before, as far as what's a good score, what's a not so good score as far as the SAT or ACT. It's all based on the college or university they're trying to get accepted into. So my answer to students when they say, how many times should I take the test? I typically respond with, well, if you're trying to get into a college that requires an SAT or ACT score higher than the one that you have, then you need to take it again until you can get the score that they're looking for. These are the 2 websites that students would go to register for these 2 tests. They actually go online to take care of that. There are registration deadlines to take the test. So for instance, if we went to SAT.org, you can see upcoming event here, regular registration deadline for the May SAT. And for any juniors that are watching this, parents especially, there's an April 7th deadline that students have to adhere to in order to take that test in the month of May. So if they're wanting to take that test and you don't want to have to pay a penalty or a late fee, I should say, you need to sign up by April 7th. For students who get a fee waiver for the SAT, you wouldn't have to pay for the actual test itself. But if if you register late, you would have to pay for the late fee. And for the ACT, actually, they wouldn't. If you did register late for the ACT, and again, the ACT is going to have a different deadline and a different test date than the SAT. They actually don't make you pay the late fee on the ACT, but for the SAT, they do. All right, a little bit. There we go. I did talk about ACT, SAT test fee waivers a while back, and again, you can find that on the Hampton High School page under PSAT. What is the PSAT, SAT, ACT test? If you scroll all the way down to the bottom. Now, during the months of April to June, this is when we encourage students to take their second opportunity. If you're a junior and you haven't started with your first opportunity, you're going to register for that May test, and then you're going to register for the June test so that you can get your second opportunity. And there's a basic reason for that is because when you come back as a senior, and specifically since we're talking about juniors right now, each college has not only a different SAT or ACT score they're looking for, but they each have a different application deadline. So you're not going to have the entire year to continue taking these tests before the deadline expires. So to apply to the college. So if you have 2 opportunities under your belt in your junior year, you get a couple more tries at the beginning of your senior year to be able to take the test if you did not get the score you're looking for to go to the college that you're applying for. And also wanted to make you aware in the summer that there is an August attempt. Usually it doesn't start until September, but this year students, if they register by the 28th of July of 2017, students can take the SAT in the month of August on the 26th. So it's very important to pay very good attention to those registration deadlines for both of those tests so that you can make sure that you have plenty of opportunities to take it to get the score that you need. So, what are some practice websites for these tests? First one I want to make sure that I talk to you about it concerning the SAT is Khan Academy. And you see the URL right there. The Khan Academy is the premier site for College Board, which is the author of the SAT. And so this program, what it allows students to do, especially if you've completed a PSAT, if you link your College Board account with Khan Academy, it'll have your PSAT results and then help you develop a strategy for focusing on those things that you need to build some skills on for things that you were a little weak on, and for those things that you have a tremendous amount of strength. You'll still get practice, but the focus would be on that aspect that you need some additional support. Also for the ACT, by clicking on the ACT, in fact, let me go to present mode. By clicking on ACT, takes you to their particular website where you looking for ACT test for students as far as getting some little extra help, talking about preparing for the test overview, checklist, your scores. There's a plethora of information on this particular website in regards to the ACT. If you scroll down to, you see practice for each test section. It has some practice questions where students can go and begin to see, how that test is set up and what kind of questions they can expect. The real trick here is knowing the directions for each of the subsections, before day one, before they take the test. That cuts off a tremendous amount of time for students if they are already familiar with the content of the test, they've taken several practice tests, it eliminates them having to figure out what the question's asking for. Although the questions will be different as far as what they're asking for on the test, the style of the question, the type of question will be similar enough so that they can not waste precious time in completing each of the subsections. We also have a practice module for ACT and the SAT on the Family Connection website. And once a student logs on, they would just simply click on this Naviance test prep, and they can choose to either take the SAT or the ACT prep module. Of course, they can take both, obviously, but they can choose one at a time, and then it gives them a practice test, assesses their current skill base, and then develops a strategy for planning to take the test on a specific day. It actually asks them, when are you going to take the ACT or SAT, so that the different modules that it sets up for you, it gives you a kind of a personalized profile. It'll set that up based on the timeline that you've given it to when you actually sit for the SAT or ACT. Some helpful tips for test day. This is also another thing that students have to really be mindful of when coming to the school building, whether they decide to take it at Hampton High or any other of our high school. Kecoughtan also offers it, and they notate that on their registration when they register online for either test. But first and foremost, they must bring their admission ticket, and they must bring a printed copy. They can't bring their phone and show an admission ticket on it. It has to be the paper copy. And they also, in addition to that admission ticket, they must have an acceptable photo ID. So for the SAT, for instance, each website, of course, whether it's the SAT or the ACT, has their ID requirements, and they're very much the same, really. But students need to make sure that they bring the appropriate photo ID in addition to their ticket, or they will be turned away and not allowed to be or won't be allowed to take the test. So we don't want that to be a barrier for students to get these test sessions completed. So it's very important that they bring in the appropriate ID. ACT, like I said, very similar. What to bring, what not to bring. Again, scrolling down, it tells you acceptable forms of ID. So whether they got a student ID or ID from DMV, they need to make sure that they bring it, or they even a military ID. But again, this will tell students exactly what they need to bring in addition to that ticket. They need to bring in number 2 pencils. They should not be mechanical pencils. They should be number 2 pencils. Encourage them to bring in 2 or more, and of course for them to have good erasers. Since this is a paper test that they will be marking answers on, if they score incorrectly, or if they write something incorrectly on the answer document, you want to erase it, they need a good eraser so they can basically make sure that the scanner doesn't pick up the answer they're trying to not have counted. And also they need to bring an approved calculator. Both websites also detail what represents an approved calculator. Again, the SAT allows students to use a calculator on one of the 2 math sections, and so of course knowing the type of calculators that are acceptable and making sure that they bring only that acceptable calculator in is paramount, or they just won't be allowed to use that calculator on that particular test. ACT, the same thing. Talks about the calculator policy and the types of calculators that are prohibited, and of course the ones that they can use to take during the ACT. just leaving this up here. Again, these are the URLs. I know it's kind of long, but literally if you go into either SAT.org and student or ACT.org, and then it'll have links to all this information I've talked about. And of course, if you wanted to get or had some further questions, obviously, please don't hesitate to communicate with your child's school counselor. All right, I was trying to, this thing's giving me a little bit of a problem here, but that ends our discussion on the ACT and SAT. For those of you who are listening, I appreciate your attention, and I hope this has clarified some issues in regards to the questions you may have as far as the ACT and the SAT, and the purpose of the test, and ways that students can do their very best. Please give us a call. 825-4454 if you have any questions, or of course you can find each of the school counselors' contact information by just going to school counseling off the Hampton High School homepage under contact information. You can email your child's specific counselor, and there's their direct phone number as well to their office. We're here to help you and to ensure that your child has every available support to be successful here at Hampton High School. I do appreciate your attention, and look forward to talking with you more about the ACT, SAT should you have questions.